Everyone, welcome back to another live community classroom with Michaels. Today we're going to be learning about mosaic knitting with our lovely friend Mary Beth Temple. My name is Renee L from Yarn Inspirations, and I'll be helping you with any questions you might have during today's class. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we will make sure that they are answered. And while we're getting ready to kick things off, please let us know where you're watching from. Over to you, Mary Beth.
Guys, welcome back to Michaels. We're doing an intermediate class today on mosaic knitting. Now, like many of the classes I teach here at Michaels, I have a lot to say about mosaic knitting, so I'm going to try and get as much of it into our hour as we can. But this is an intermediate class, so some of the basic stuff I'm going to sort of zip through. But remember, you can always watch the video again at michaels.com or on YouTube. So we're going to use two Ogos in the Bernat blanket. We're going to use copper coins and purple plum, and then I'm going to use a regular skein of blanket. Those are going to be my three colors. I have already done my cast on, and we're going to jump right to the interesting part. So Renee, if you would, let's switch to the other camera. And so let's talk about mosaic knitting. Let me get a little more light on the subject. Let's talk about mosaic knitting and let's talk about slip stitch knitting. Now, all mosaic knitting is slip stitch knitting. Not all slip stitch knitting is mosaic knitting. Now, I personally would not have referred to this as a mosaic pattern, but it does have slip stitch in it and it does have a geometric aspect. So myself and the designers at Yarn Inspirations are just going to agree to disagree on the title, but the techniques that we're going to learn today will help you whether you're doing regular plain old slip stitch knitting or if you're doing mosaic knitting. There are techniques that we're going to go over that will help you all the way around. As is often the case, I am working on a much smaller swatch than you will have, because if we had to wait for me to get to the end of 111 stitches on camera, we wouldn't get very far technically. So I have cast on a smaller number. So with A, and A is the copper coins Ogo, or whatever colors you choose. You don't have to choose the same colors that we chose, but make sure if you're choosing different colors that all three colors in each Ogo have some contrast, because what will happen, so if you look, let me see if I can grab it. These are the colors from copper coins. And then these are the colors from the other one, the plum one. So no matter where the colors line up, I'm going to have contrast throughout. If you pick two Ogos that have the same color in it, what's going to happen is your color work pattern is going to disappear because there's going to be no differentiation between the two colors of yarn. So if you choose different colors, just make sure that there's contrast between all six. So there's three colors in this one, there's three colors in this one. Make sure they all play nicely together and that there is contrast between them. So the first thing that you're going to do is cast on 103 stitches, and you're going to work back and forth on that circular needle. We're not joining. Of course, we suggested a circular needle just so that you have enough room to accommodate the full width of the blanket. I'm sorry, I got a little tangled here. Give me 1 second. I have too many things going on in the studio today. So again, this is an intermediate class. I'm not going over the cast on, but we always recommend the knitted or knitted on cast on here at Yarn Inspirations. You could use long tail, whatever floats your boat. You're going to knit 3 rows, and on the 4th row, you're going to increase. So I'm just going to briefly go over the knit front and back increase, which is the one I always use for garter stitch because it hides so nicely. And that is abbreviated KFB. So I'm, again, not following the math instructions because my swatch is so much smaller. To do a KFB, or knit front and back increase, you knit in the front of the stitch like you always would, but do not push it off the left-hand needle. So you have this little butterfly right here. You have your new stitches on the right-hand needle, but your left stitches on the left-hand needle, your old stitches on the left-hand needle, you have not gotten rid of it yet. You're going to knit again in the back of that same stitch on the left hand and then push it off the needle. So if you look, I have taken one stitch and turned it into two. So that's an increase. So that's a KFB increase. And that's the one I like best. I mean, it's the recommended one, so that's what I would have taught anyway, but it's the one I like best for garter stitch because it hides very well in garter stitch. Let's do that. I need to do it 3 times total. You will do it as many times as the pattern says. Knit front. Do not push it off the left-hand needle. Knit back. Do push it off the left-hand needle. So following the instructions the way they're written, you're going to go from 103 stitches to 111. And you really want to count because this is a type of pattern in which math is super important. You want to make sure that you have the right number of stitches because you're one off, your pattern's not going to line up and you're going to make yourself bananas. And this is not so hard to do once you get the hang of some of the techniques, but it is a little fiddly to set up. So I've increased my 3 stitches. You will increase your 8 stitches. I'm going to double count. I want 27 for this swatch. I'm going to just double count for my own sanity so I don't mess up on camera. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, which is exactly what I wanted. So moving on to the first row of the mosaic diamond pattern, I'm going to use C. Now I'm not ending off my yarn. I'm going to let my yarn travel up the side. So I know you all want to watch me knit, but I really want to talk about these types of patterns. There's a lot of tips that you can get from reading and looking at the chart, and I want to talk about them. So we do have everything written out in text, and I know some people are allergic to charts, but I'm here to tell you for this type of slip stitch work, working off the chart is going to make you less bananas because you can see the stitches that you're doing in relationship to the stitches that already exist. It helps you not make errors. And if you're making an error, it helps you to catch it quickly so that you don't make a mistake, so that you don't have to rip back row upon row, because ripping this out is not fun because of the slip stitches. It's really easy to lose them. So let's talk some more about this chart. First off, we have our key is over here. The one you may not be familiar with is this SL1PWYIB or SL1PWYIF. All this means is slip 1, which is a common abbreviation. We've seen that all the time. The P stands for purlwise. So slip 1 purlwise. WYIB or WYIF stands for with yarn in back or with yarn in front. So I'm going to slip 1 stitch. I'm going to do it as if to purl, and my yarn will be in the back on the right side rows and the front on the wrong side rows. So if you sort of think about how this works, all of this madness is just telling you that the yarn that floats behind the slipped stitch is always on the wrong side of the work, right? So if I'm looking at my right side row and I'm slipping with yarn on back, that's on the wrong side row. If I'm working a wrong side row and I slip with yarn in front, that's also the wrong side of the work. So I'm telling you that the slips are always on the wrong side of the work. So you don't have to think when you see that abbreviation, you know that you're just always going to have that float on the wrong side. So that helps. The other thing I want to talk about, so I was just saying how we don't cut off our yarn when we change colors, but we let it travel up the side. If you look at the color chart, you will notice that we change colors after 2 rows. It is always after 2 rows with the exception of the borders. And the reason is when I go across and I come back and I drop my yarn, my next color, once they're all added, is waiting for me. If sometimes I change color over here and sometimes I change color over there, I'm going to have to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to have to cut. I'm going to have a trillion ends to weave in. We don't do that in mosaic or slip stitch knitting. Usually we want to do it in multiples of 2 rows. So our traveling yarn is always traveling on this side. So once again, if you put your work down, you come back, you're not sure where you are, know that you're not going to change yarn on this side. So if you're, if you don't have to make it harder than it needs to be. You have to really sort of be intuitive. The other thing about mosaic knitting patterns, and many, if not all, slip stitch patterns, the first stitch, which is not included in our 12 stitch repeat, but the first stitch of every row tells you what color yarn should be in your hand. You're never going to have, in mosaic knitting particularly, you're never going to have an instance in which the first square is black and you're working with white. It doesn't work like that. One of the reasons there's that first column of stitches outside of the repeat, and again, this is traditional for many, many patterns, is to tell you, to give you a visual clue what color yarn should be in your hand. Now, it's not always going to be gold or gray, but it does tell you whether it's A, B, or C, right? So that's super helpful. Other tips, this particular blanket begins and ends with a garter stitch, I'm pretty sure. Yep. So the first and last stitch is garter stitch. That's what those little guys mean. So again, do I want to look at the key every single time I pick up my yarn? No, I don't. If I remember that that's garter stitch, then I can pretty much ignore a lot of those symbols because I'm going to do it intuitively. And then the other thing, and I'll talk more about this when we get there, one of the joys of mosaic knitting and many slip stitch patterns is that when you read your chart from right to left, and again, we're telling you right side 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, you're going to start on this side and read that way, and the numbers on that side, which is a visual clue that that's where you're going to start reading. When you're doing your wrong side rows, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, our numbers are on this side to remind you that you're going in that direction. Now, again, just overall looking at that chart, in this pattern and in most mosaic patterns, not all, I hate to say always and never, but there are no instances in which the slip stitch moves after 1 row. The reason that V covers 2 rows is because if you're going to slip it this way, you're going to slip it that way. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to the knitting. Lastly, when I'm doing charts in general, you can get highlighter tape, you can pencil off rows, but if you've got to do a ton of it, this is a 24 row repeat, and I'm going to do it multiple times to knit the whole height of my blanket. So I always feel like pencil marks get a little frustrating after a while because there's pencil marks there and I can't remember. There are things like highlighter tape that you can get. You can highlight the row you're going to work on. But honestly, what I tend to do is just grab a blank piece of paper and cover up the rows I don't need to be looking at. Now, a lot of people will tell you to cover in this direction, but to me, that's kind of silly because then you're looking at your row that you're going to knit in relationship to stitches you have not yet knit. Whereas if I have my paper up here, I'm looking at the stitches that I have to knit in relationship to the ones that are already there, which again gives me a bunch of visual clues that I'm knitting the pattern correctly, that I'm not going to have to go back and rip out or deal with errors. So I'm going to start with row 1. I'm going to knit 1, then I'm going to knit 4, slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, knit 3, slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, knit 3, and I'm going back to the beginning of the 12 stitch repeat. I'm going to do that 12 stitch repeat as many times as I need to. You might have to do it 6 or 8 times. I'm only repeating it 1 time. I'm going to do it twice in total. When I get to the end, I'm going to have 2 stitches left and I'm going to knit them. So I'm going to knit 1 and then do my repeat twice, and then I'm going to knit 2. So let's take a look at what that looks like. That was a lot of talking, and I'm sorry. Like I said, I know you'd rather watch me knit, but I really like to get my tips in there at the beginning so you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, which I think makes your life easier in the long run. When I add a color, now you're only adding a color at the beginning of each color, or when you have to add a new skein, because this is not a one skein project. That's a lot of yardage. I just pull up a fold of the yarn, maybe 4 to 6 inches in from the end. You want to leave a nice long tail, particularly in blanket, which is so soft and squishy. You want to leave a nice long tail so you can weave that in later. So again, you can follow along if you've downloaded the pattern, and I know that either Raina or Renee has left you a link to the pattern. You can follow along in the pattern with the text or with the chart. Either will work. So the first thing I'm going to do is knit 1. And again, I'm just pulling up a fold and joining my yarn there. Now I'm going to knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. My next instruction, slip 1 purlwise with yarn in back. So I'm going to slip the stitch from the left hand needle to the right hand needle without doing anything to it. No twisting, no knitting, no purling, no nothing. I'm just moving it from one side to the other, but I'm holding my right hand needle as if I'm going to purl. So there's my slip 1 purlwise, and my yarn's already in the back. So I'm just going to bring that yarn behind the slipped stitch. Now you will find that you develop a rhythm as you go, but you don't want a big loose loop back there, because that will catch on things and it'll make those stitches sloppy. But you also don't want to pull it in super, super tight, because that the fabric in general will pull in a little bit widthwise, which is why we had you add those KFB, those knit front and backs, in the last row of the border, instead of just casting on the number of stitches we wanted you to have. But because the work draws in from side to side, because of the nature of slip stitches, if I had had you cast on 111 stitches, because I wanted 111 stitches, and then I started doing mosaic, what would happen is the border would, we call it rowing out. It would angle at a weird angle. So that's the reason we have you doing all that increasing in that final row. So there's my slipped stitch. Now it's knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1 with yarn in back, knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going back to the beginning of the repeat. So it's knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip 1 purlwise with yarn in back, knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Slip 1 purlwise with yarn in back, knit 3, 1, 2, 3. And then again, you will have to repeat that many more times, but I only have 2 repeats on my little on-camera swatch. So you're going to keep repeating until you have 2 stitches left. And you're going to knit 2, 1, 2. Now, one of the things I want you to notice now is your rows look like 2-color rows, but you're still only going to knit or purl or whatever you're doing. You're only going to do it with 1 color in your hand at a time. So we're not going to have multiple colors in our hands ever. We're only going to knit or purl with 1 color at a time. Again, a lot of people see these charts and they get confused. They want to know, when they bring up their new color. But what's happening is the color in the row below, that's the color that's coming up because you slipped it. You didn't do anything to it. It's the color that started out with. Renee, I know I'm going. Yeah, I was just going to say, I know I'm going super fast. So do we have some questions before I start addressing wrong side rows?
We do. Everyone, if you want to stream in your questions while I go over this one quickly. So the question is, sorry, just pulling it up. The chart has 5 white boxes before slip stitch. Doesn't this mean that we need to knit 5 stitches before the slip stitch?
Yes, but only the first time. Let's talk about that. That's a really great question. Thank you for asking it. The repeat starts here. So that knit 1 at the beginning only happens 1 time. So we're going to knit 1 and then knit 4, slip 1, yada, yada, yada. And then when the repeat begins again, that guy doesn't happen. See how that lines up? So if you look, let me see what they wrote in the text pattern. So if you look at the text pattern, they didn't write knit 5, even though it is a knit 5, because it's only a knit 5 at the beginning of the row. Does I hope that makes sense? They wrote knit 1, knit 4, and then yada, 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 and then your asterisk comes here. So that's why I didn't say knit 5 at any point, because we don't write the patterns that way because it messes up the repeat.
Awesome. Thank you.
And also let's look at the thing. There it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I did it. I just didn't say it the way that you were expecting me to say it.
Perfect. They said they understand, so we're good to go.
Do we have any other questions before I move on to wrong side rows?
So far, so good. But if everyone wants to drop their questions in the chat, next time we have a little break, I can ask all of them.
Well, again,
Let's
I know
proceed.
I'm sort of laughing at myself because I know that I was talking really fast. But this is one of my favorite topics, and I'm like, I want to get all of my tips in.
All good. We're just having fun. And you know what, guys, if this is moving too fast, you can always check out the recording once it's up. I think it's after 24 hours, right now? Yeah, I think it's 24. So it'll be on YouTube afterwards. So if we're moving a little fast, you know, just check it out the next day and you can pause and slow down whenever you like.
And then I won't sound like a chipmunk. Okay. So that was the row that we completed, row 1. Now we've moved on to row 2. And we are reading the chart from this direction to that direction because it's a wrong side row. And we're going to knit 1, purl 1, because that is not included in the 12 stitch repeat. So the directions will say, or I will say, knit 1, purl 1. Then it's going to be purl 3, slip 1 purlwise with yarn in front, purl 3, slip 1 purlwise with yarn in front, purl 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to ignore that last stitch until I get to the very end. Then I'm going to go back to the beginning of the 12 stitch repeat. Now, I was talking earlier about how this has a garter stitch edging by dint of having a 1 stitch garter stitch at the beginning and end, and everything else is purl in the wrong side row unless it's a slip. If you don't want to read the charts on the wrong side row, knit the first stitch, knit the last stitch. If it's the color in your hand, purl it. If it's the color below, slip it. So do I have to look at this chart? Nope. If I am the type of knitter that is an intuitive knitter and I'm good at reading my knitting, the only thing I have to know on wrong side rows is knit the first and last stitch. If I knit it in the previous row, I'm going to purl it now. And if I slipped it, I'm going to slip it. And I'm going to always keep that float, that yarn that goes behind the slip stitch is always going to be on the wrong side of the work. So now, honestly, I can't remember the last time I looked at a chart for a wrong side row because the math just works. I don't have to look. I don't have to count. I can watch TV. I can watch YouTube. I don't have to count. I don't have to think. I can just skip all those rows because other than the first and the last stitch, which are always knit, if I knit it, I'm going to purl it. If I slipped it, I'm going to slip it. And that's all I have to know to correctly do a wrong side row. I'm not looking at the chart. I'm not counting. I am reading my knitting. I'm letting my knitting talk to me so that it is an easier process. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to everybody. You can't do this with every single knitting pattern in the world, but you can do it with Mosaic 100% of the time, and you can do it with regular slip stitch knitting probably about 90% of the time.
All good so far, no questions, but yes, it's excellent. It's just nice to have a hobby where you can kind of go into flow state. It's just nice with those patterns.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people are put off by the design density of patterns like this. But again, by sort of taking this class and getting these tips, when I used to play an instrument in high school, my band director called it being afraid of the ink. Like if you saw a lot of 8th notes and 16th notes, you'd be like, oh crap, I'm never going to be able to play that because it's too complicated. And I think people are afraid of the ink with mosaic knitting. That's my last stitch, so I'm going to knit it. They see the intricacy of the design. They see the multiple colors. They might think that is the most beautiful blanket I've ever seen, and I really want to have it, but I'm not sure I can do it. But doing these types of little tips makes the process easier, and then you get to have what you want, which is super cool. All right, so we're going to move on to the third row. So you can see I did my 2 colors in my C color, so now I'm moving back to the B color. So this one time, because I haven't attached it yet, I'm going to have to grab it and attach it. So I'm going to knit 1, not knit 2 because of where the repeat falls. So knit 1, slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back because this is a right side row, so I want the yarn away from me. Knit 3, slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, knit 1, slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, knit 3, slip 1 purlwise. Now I'm going back to the beginning of the repeat. Knit 1, slip, knit 3, slip, knit 1, slip, knit 3, slip. Again, you can go back as many times as you need to. And then when I get to those last 2 stitches, I'm going to knit them. Now, the other thing I want to talk about in general, just again, from an intuitive knitting standpoint, is that the vast majority of patterns, the vast majority, 99.99% of patterns that have slip stitches in them, be they mosaic or not, oops, sorry, I hit the camera. You will not see a slip stitch on top of a slip stitch until there have been at least 2 rows, in this case 4 rows, in between. And the reason is this. When I was talking earlier about how we had to add those stitches to the last row of the border instead of beginning the border with those stitches because mosaic and slip stitch both pull in widthwise, slipped stitches adjust the height of your rows. Because I'm slipping each of those stitches 2 times, it's not gaining in height, it's sort of stretching out, but it's not going to be as tall as it would have been if I had knit 2 stitches, right? Because of that, it forces the row height down a little bit. So what would happen if I slipped a stitch here and then here and then here and then here? The work is, I'm going to have, you know, basically, it's like a ribbon being wrapped around wrapping paper. I'm going to have so much slipping on top of each other that I'm not going to have any row height at all. And 2 things are going to happen. One, it's going to be ugly as sin. And the other thing that's going to happen, eventually that yarn's going to break because there's too much pressure on it. So it's another thing to sort of have in the back of your brain, another handy dandy little tip, that if you're seeing a bunch of slip stitches on top of each other, you have likely made a counting error, because that's something that we avoid. So you can see there's at least 2 rows, right? 2 rows. I said 4 earlier, I meant 2. Between a vertical column of slips. And that's to keep the work from being so tight from top to bottom that it is unattractive and structurally unsound. So I'm going to set up and knit my 3rd row. Hang on, I just have to set that up. It's so, I have to be able to see it, and you also have to be able to see me. So sometimes it takes me a second to get everything to where I want it to be. So these colors, I'm leaving them hanging off to the side because I'm going to use them again later. And I absolutely do not want to weave in 12 million ends. So I'm leaving them here. They're just going to hang out. And now I'm joining my C color. Just by picking up a fold 4 to 6 inches in from the end. So I'm knitting one. That's my edge stitch. And now I'm going to knit one. Slip one purlwise with yarn in back, knit 3. 1, 2, 3. Slip 1, knit 1, slip 1. Knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Slip 1. Ignore those last 2 stitches till you get to the very end. We're going back to the beginning of the repeat. Knit 1, slip 1, knit 3, 1, 2, 3. And now if you look at the chart, you'll notice that the third of those 3 knit stitches, you're knitting the color that slipped up from below. So again, that's one more sort of intuitive, sort of visual clue that your stitches are lining up properly. If you see that you should be knitting on a stitch in an opposing color and you're not, you have an error. Fix it now before it gets difficult to fix. That was slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1. Again, you'll have more repeats. I have 2 stitches left. I know I have to knit them because the chart or the text, whichever you prefer to use, tells me to knit those last 2 stitches. So you can see my slip stitches are pulling up, and to accommodate that height, they're sort of grabbing, they're grabbing some yarn from the stitches on either side of them, and that's fine. Going back, once again, I know that I have to knit the first stitch. And now I'm going to purl the knits and slip the slips, or read the text, or read the chart. And the way I can tell what I knit and what I slipped is because it's a different color. Renee, do we have any questions? Or is everybody just fascinated?
I think everyone is just calmly enjoying you knitting. We have a compliment from Connie who said, I love your explanations and how you stress to read your stitches.
Thank you. Again, I think it's something that it makes the process more enjoyable. I don't want to count all the time. You know what I mean? Sometimes I need to know what's happening on Netflix. And I always, like when I teach lace, I always joke about, I always pick patterns that have technical details on one side and you either knit back or purl back on the other side, because those are my coasting rows. Like I don't have to think about it. All right, let's see what we got going on here. So that is the 3rd and 4th row are complete. Still not seeing much of a pattern here, but again, we're getting there. So now I'm moving up to 4 and 5, and I'm going to need my C color, which is the cream colored blanket. So here it is. Now these stitches right now look super loose, and that's okay. It's just because that's where my cut ends were. And when I weave my ends in at the end of my project, before I enjoy my super squishy blanket, I can tighten those stitches up. So I'm going to bring my yarn up. I'm not going to cut and start again. So much like the floats along the side of the work, I want to bring this yarn up the side, but I don't want to pull it too tight. and I don't want to make it too loose. I'm just wondering if they did cut the ends on this. I would not normally have done that. No, it says carry yarn when not in use, loosely up the side of the work, taking new color from behind old, being careful not to twist, yada, 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 yada. Yep, okay. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't making Yarnspirations a liar, but no, they also said to track the yarn up the side. I always do, it's just easier. Okay, so we're on the 5th row. I'm bringing up my sea colored yarn, being careful not to pull it too tight because that's going to mess up my height, but also not make it sloppy loose. I'm going to knit 1 to start. Now I'm looking at the chart. I'm going to knit 2, 1, 2, slip 1, knit 3. Oh, I am all tangled here today. Hold on. If you guys could see what madness happens in the background, you would be appalled.
The magic of television, kind of.
Right? Okay, let's try this again. Knit 1, knit 2, slip 1, knit 3. That's why I can't count. Slip 1, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, once again keeping that yarn in the back, knit 1. All right, let me count, make sure I'm in the ballpark. I should have 13 because that was a 12 stitch repeat plus the original stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes. Some people, I don't always recommend this, but if you are the nervous type and you are concerned about your counting, you could always, if you wanted to, put a ring or a locking stitch marker between the repeats. I know people that have done this. Again, I think it's a little too much being nervous, but you could put a stitch marker after, ignoring that first stitch, after every 12 stitches. So that again, if you got to the end, you had a miscount, you had a problem, you're not trying to count 111 stitches and see if they're correct. You were looking at each individual 12 stitch repeat and making sure it's correct. It can help you isolate where problems are. Now, you know, I don't, again, go into knitting a big project anticipating that there's going to be problems, but that is another little tip that you can do to help yourself if you're concerned. So I'm going to do that 12 stitch repeat one more time. That's knit 2, 1, 2, slip 1 with yarn and back, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 1, and again repeat that until you have 2 left. You're going to knit the last 2, 1, 2. And I'm all tangled up here, so let me untangle that. Once again, gonna go back on cruise control, knit the first and last stitch, purl the nips, slip the slips. Do we have any more questions, Renee?
No, we're still just enjoying. We're good.
All right. I am going to just knit a couple more rows. I want to jump. I can't really jump in this pattern. I want to get up to rows 9 and 10 because there's a little bit of technique in there that we haven't done yet. So I'm just gonna, this is row 6 and I will knit 7 and 8 on camera. I will spit out any tips I can think of. And if you have any more questions, please ask. But I do want to get up to rows 9 and 10 before the end of the class. And I think I should just be able to do that because we have 19 minutes left and we're all good. Renee and I often joke that I have a future in ASMR videos. if I could ever stop talking long enough to do it.
You could, yeah. We'll just mute you in the videos. Just kidding. Yeah, it is deeply satisfying to watch people knit or clean things sometimes. It's just, it's happiness for the soul. Or maybe it's just me.
And we're going to knit that last stitch. All right, let me look at seven and eight. So once again, I'm going to bring my yarn up the side. Now this is a lot. This is a pretty big float, I have to say. But I'm going to do it anyway because I don't like ends. So once again, my other working yarns, I want them to just sort of hang out and be out of the way. Going to bring this guy up behind, being careful not to pull too tight, nor let him be too loose. I don't want him to be too loosey-goosey, but I also don't want it so tight that I lose height. Yeah, I can live with that. So that would be knit one, knit three, 1, 2, 3, slip one with yarn and back, knit 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that 5? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slip 1, knit 2. 1, 2. So again, just to double check myself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I counted correctly, so I'm going back to the beginning of the repeat. Remember, the beginning of the repeat, not the beginning of the row. Knit 3. 1, 2, 3, slip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip 1, 2, and then that's the end of my last repeat. So I have 2 left. Knit the last 2. Cruise control back. Knit the first one, purl the knits, slip the slips. If this was a blanket, which is what it would be if you were doing it, this would be so thick and cozy. This would be super warm. See, hanging out in front of a fireplace with this. Look how thick that is. Because of the yarn stranding behind, it's almost like a double layer of soft, squishy yarniness.
Yeah, this seems like the perfect winter project.
Yes, think how much you'll save on heat. When it gets big enough that can sit on your lap, you can be under the blanket knitting the blanket at the same time.
Knit yourself some new insulation.
Yep. Well, it's funny. I'm from the New York City metropolitan area, but I live in North Carolina now. I would no more knit a blanket now than I would stick a fork in my eye, just because it's too hot. But I have dozens of blankets in my closet that I have knit and crocheted. And then we're going to knit that last one. All right, let me untangle a little bit. So let's see, moving on to 10 or 11 and 12. wait. Nope, I'm telling you. That was 7 and 8. We're doing 9 and 10. 9 and 10 has the thing I wanted to talk about, so we're all good. Let me just get a drink real quick. All right, so we are on row 9, and I'm starting with my C color, my cream color. And I know that because that first box is the white. And I'm always going to knit with whatever color is in the first box. And you can see the pattern starting to build up here, which is kind of cool. So put that to the side, bring up my cream. You are just in the way. Here we go. So I'm going to knit 1. Again, making sure that I'm not pulling too tight here, nor being too loose. Slip 1 with yarn and back. Slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, knit 3. 1, 2, 3. Now it says slip 2. Let's take a look at that. So here's my slip 2. And there are a couple instances in this pattern where you slip 2 right next to each other. In the same way that we were talking about height, and I said that I wouldn't want a slip stitch pattern in which I was slipping row upon row upon row, in which the slip stitch is stacked up in a column. Generally speaking, you don't want too many side to side either. And you'll notice in this pattern, there are only 2 that are next to each other. Now, if you continue on in your exploration of mosaic knitting or slip stitch knitting, or both, you will see some patterns with 3. I think I've seen one with 4, but generally speaking, that's it. You're not going to slip, 10, because the float going across the back would be too big. But one thing that I feel like has made a difference in my slip stitch knitting, which sounds counterintuitive, but it works for me, so I'm going to share it with you. If I'm going to slip 2, which is what I'm about to do, I'm not sticking my needle in and jamming them both over as one. I'm going to slip 1, and then I'm going to slip the other one. And I don't know why it makes a difference. I don't know the technical reason, but it's like it gives the stitch a little more room to breathe, and they don't jam up on top of each other, and your floats tend to lay more nicely. I don't know why, but I never like jam my needle in and grab 2 at a time. If I'm going to slip 2, which I'm about to, and because I've slipped 2 and not 1, I have to pay a little more attention to that float across the back. Once again, not too tight, not too loose. It has to take up the exact amount of space that those stitches are taking up. So there was my knit 1. Now I'm going to slip 2. So I'm going to slip 1 and slip 2. And then in this case, knit 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going back to the beginning of that 12 stitch repeat. So it's slip 1, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 2, 1, 2, knit 1, being careful not to pull too tightly. Slip 2, 1, 2, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, and my last 2 stitches are not knit 2. If I look at the chart or the text, it's slip 1, knit 1. So in that case, the slip is outside of the realm of the 12 stitch repeat. That happens in 2 rows out of 24, but you do have to sort of pay attention to that. Cruise control back, knit the first stitch. After that, slip what you slipped, purl what you knit. Now the same thing goes on the wrong side rows. When I get to those 2 stitches next to each other, I am once again going to slip them 1 at a time. I'm not going to jam my needle into 2 stitches. It lets them breathe a little bit more. and it makes sure that they lay nice and flat. It's really easy to pull your floats too tightly and make this work look uncomfortably tight. So you really have to make sure that you're giving everything enough room to breathe. Also, if you are a person who is a tight knitter, I might consider going up a needle size. Because let's be honest, there's a listed gauge on the pattern, and we're always supposed to say you should always do gauge every single time. But you know, honestly, who does gauge on a blanket? It's a blanket. It'll be more or less the right size. But I would consider, if you feel like your work is too tight, I would consider going up a needle size. Obviously, if you do not get the gauge written in the pattern, you have to make sure you have enough yarn, etc., etc. I'm not telling you willy-nilly to go out there. Oh, last one's a knit. And ignore gauge swatches. And it's not a recommendation I often make, but honestly, who among us is going to swatch a blanket? I don't swatch blankets and I don't swatch hats. It'll fit somebody. If it's not me, it'll go in the donation pile. You know what I mean? We can tell you as many times as we want to swatch everything every time for the rest of your life. But who does it? Nobody, because this is a hobby. And we want to relax and have fun, and we want to make our cool projects. Look at this. Look at how cool this pattern is coming up, though. It's interesting because you can't, on the photograph, it's kind of really, I mean, you can see it starting to build up, but there's not like a super close up of the stitch pattern. It's really cool to see it start to build up on your needles. I love this. It looks like Moroccan tile to me. You know, you see all of those beautiful tile buildings from the Middle East or from Morocco, from Africa, and they have all this beautiful tile work, and the colors shade in and out because of the age of the buildings. That's kind of what this looks like to me. And you can see the colors as the colors in the Ogo shift. You can see the colors are changing from one side of the blanket to the other. And that is the other reason that I told you at the beginning that you have to make sure that all 6 of the colors in your 2 complementary Ogos are friendly with each other and not the same color. Because if I was knitting this color work and two sections the same color came up and say they were gray, I would just have a gray stripe right in the middle. I wouldn't be able to see the pattern of the tile. So do make sure if you pick other colors, and of course you can pick other colors, pick the color that goes best with your mood or your home decor, but make sure everybody gets along with everybody else before you cast on 103 stitches and find out that you're not happy with the colors that you chose. So we're coming up on the end. And so this is your last chance, you guys. If you have questions, now is a really good time to ask them because we're almost out of time.
Absolutely. Everyone, let us know if you have any other questions, and we'll get to them hopefully before the end of the class if there are any. Excellent point about the stitch pattern though, Mary Beth. Like, it is really nice to see it close up this way. It's hard to see the intricacy of it when it's further away, and that, I think that's what looks intimidating, is seeing the blanket from far away. But it's when you can, what was the expression from your music teacher, get intimidated by the ink?
You're intimidated by the ink. But
yeah.
I also think that's what happens with the pattern too. If you look at the text for this pattern, it's a 24-row repeat. It's a whole page of block text, you know what I mean? And you think, oh, I don't want to work that hard. I don't want to read that much. I don't want to, you know, that's more than I want to commit to. But when you learn the tips about the repeats and the wrong side rows and reading your knitting and being intuitive, well, then it's not that hard. And so it is a project that you could take on, even if you were a little concerned about it.
Absolutely. When we are able to see it this way, it kind of breaks it down into more like easy to process chunks.
Yep, more manageable chunks too.
Absolutely. So we had an ask, please show a finished diamond up close if you could.
The problem here, let me finish this row and then I will do that. The problem here is that I have not gotten through, it's a 24-row repeat. And we're only halfway through a diamond. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, I had to count 9. But I will show at the end of the next row, I will show you up close what we have, and that will be halfway through the motif, because I'm right now knitting rows 11 and 9, 11 and 12, and that's half of the pattern.
Perfect.
Slip, knit. I have to figure out what I'm doing here, people. Slip, 1, 8, 9, slip 1, knit 2, 1, 2. Hardly any slips in this row. This will be very quick to go back on. Require no brain cells whatsoever. Remember to knit that first and last row, first and last stitch. Keep your border nice and solid. So I'll finish this row and then we'll take a close look at the front and the back. How's that?
That is perfect. Thank you.
I tell you what, with yarn this thick and needles this big, it does go pretty quickly too.
Yeah, that's the bonus about bulky or super bulky yarns, hey?
Yep. It's like instant gratification, even though you're doing a blanket. I had a customer service request from my site the other day, and somebody wanted to do a blanket that was 88 by 99, and she wanted to do it in DK weight. And she said, how many, I want to use this stitch pattern, and here's the math. How many skeins do I need? I was like, 36.
You need a warehouse.
And she's like, you're kidding. I'm like, well, unless you gave me faulty math, a faulty number on which to base my math. I did the math twice. That's what it looks like. So here is the right side of the work. So you can see again how the slip stitches, when they come up through the colored rows, like this was a slip stitch, you can see it's elongated. It covers 2 rows in height instead of 1. But that's how you get these color patterns that appear to have multiple colors in each row. But you've noticed, and I said it, you're only ever having one color in your hand. This is not stranded knitting where you're changing colors every couple of stitches. The color that you started with is the color you're going to knit with until you finish those 2 rows and move on to the next color. So that's an important thing to remember. But here's the beginning of our pattern, our little zigzags. And then this is what it looks like on the wrong side. This is what I was talking about before, about it's nice and dense. But you see my floats. My floats behind 2 stitches are wider than my floats behind 1 stitch. They're not sticking out. They're not super loopy because I don't want to get my finger caught in that or the dog's toenail or whatever. And I don't want those stitches to loosen up. But I also, if I pull those floats too tightly, it's going to bring in the width and it's going to look crinkly on the front and it will not be appealing. So you want to watch the float and make sure that the floats accommodate the tension or the gauge that you're actually getting. And it's 2 o'clock, my children, and that is all I have to say today about mosaic knitting.
Wonderful. Okay, I think we're all good. Oh, sorry, DT asked, is this technique the same as color work? Well, I guess the color was kind of happening continuously, yeah?
Color work is a catch-all term. So mosaic is a type of color work, but color work, it's like Kleenex and tissue. All Kleenex is tissue, but not all tissue is Kleenex. You know what I mean? And that's what I was saying earlier about mosaic versus slip stitching. I personally wouldn't consider this a mosaic pattern because the individual tiles don't tile, but I'm willing to be wrong about that. You know what I mean? Like that's a discussion that crazy people like me who care about knitting fabric would talk about. You know what I mean? but there is stranded color work. There is slip stitch color work. So color work is a catch-all term. It's very broad. It just encompasses working in color, but there's different types of color work. So this is one of them.
Absolutely. But again, I think of it as an umbrella kind of.
Yeah. But again, the big difference is for stranded color work, which incorporates Fair Isle and some other techniques. You're handling multiple strands of yarn in a single row that are different colors. In slip, stitch, and mosaic, you are only handling one color of yarn in a row. So if I'm trying to knit this and I'm doing stranded color work, I have this color, and I'm twisting as I go or changing as I go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm doing it in slip stitch, which is what we just did, I'm only ever manipulating one color of yarn at the same time. That's the main difference. After that, stranded color work breaks down into Fair Isle, which is, you know, very geographically specific and has its own rules. But there's other kinds of stranded color work that are not Fair Isle. But that is a conversation for a different day when I have 6 hours to bore you all with my thoughts on stranded color work.
Mary Beth, I love your lectures.
But,
another day.
Another day. But if you guys want to hit me up on Instagram, it's hooked4life LLC on Instagram. You can ask me questions. You can show me your stuff. I'd appreciate a follow first. But I will, that is monitored. So if you want to reach me, Instagram is the best place to do it. And then I know Renee is going to say goodbye from Yarn Inspirations.
Awesome. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today for this live community classroom with Michaels. Do not forget to share your work with #MakeItWithMichaels and #YarnsBow. And just a reminder that you can find more classes on michaels.com and a recording of today's class at michaels.com/classes. And all good. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.